I think that Georgie Fisher was really hard done by. A lot of the players are being pushed, being allowed to do things that you're not allowed to in the rules. And if they're not sorting that out, the players take it into their own hands. When they do that, the umpire is allowed to say that that's dissent.
Shooters are going to get hammered, and more so in this modern game. There should be able to be maybe a little bit more dialogue with umpires. Like Fisher was being smashed.
You know, I don't know any other goal attack at the moment that's got anything on Tiana. I think, you know, she is going to be the answer to a missing Ikanasio.
Kelly's in amazing form, but, you know, she has a silent partner out in front of her, and Manu has been a revelation. And I think Manu in a black dress, you know, is that going to happen? Because, man, she's knocking on the door pretty hard.
Nau mai ki te hōtaka o te poi tara whiti kiwi. I'm Bridget Tunnicliffe. The Silver Fern selectors have a massive few weeks ahead of them as a result of COVID postponements. Just 27 out of 47 regular season games have been completed so far in the ANZ Premiership. The next 20 games, including finals, will be packed into the next 4 weeks and couldn't be more critical as players try to impress for Commonwealth Games selections. So we're going to review where things stand as we go into the business end of the competition. To help me do that, I'm joined by former Silver Fern and international umpire Joan Hodson and New Zealand men's assistant coach and Hong Kong coach Dion Te Whetu. Kia ora korua.
Kia ora, Bridget.
Kia ora. I'll start with you, Joan. What have you thought of the general standard so far of the ANZ Premiership?
Yeah, interesting. I've been watching a lot of the Aussie League. And just the differences between the two countries has been, we look a bit slow compared to what Aussie are doing, but, you know, they're pretty haphazard as well. As it comes towards the finals, you can see that there's the teams, including the girls that have just come from COVID, they're playing to what they've been faced with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one to assess, isn't it, with all the disruptions I've had. Dion, do you think there are a few players who really need to hit their straps at the business end of the season?
I think you need to sort of step back and go, what does that look like for us at the moment? There's, I think everyone needs to hit their straps, and I feel for the coaching and the management of each team, and Netball New Zealand having to juggle things around because it has been so disruptive. But I think there'll probably be the games leading up to the Com Games. There's going to be some players that'll be looking over their shoulders coming into those Silver Fern camps.
The Mystics are, as predicted, are again the team to beat, sitting top of the table. What we didn't really expect was the Magic to be propping up the bottom of the ladder again, but then they've been had so much thrown at them. Amelia Ikanasio was back to limited court time last weekend after having COVID, and you'd have to think that every day now counts for Ikanasio as she tries to regain her fitness. Time is not on her side. Dion, how do you fancy the Silver Ferns' chances if Amelia doesn't make it in time for the Com Games?
Look, I think she would leave a decent sized hole in the team if she doesn't make it. The issue there will be having someone in that team that offers the same off the court as what Amelia does, is what she does on the court. And it's going to be hard to replace her on the court. We were just lucky when Maria, you know, stopped playing for the Ferns, that Meals came in and sort of, it was pretty seamless really, and she stepped up to the plate. But I think it will leave a hole for sure. I just hope that she can get herself up to the standard required to be able to travel to the Com Games, and I really, really hope she can.
Yeah. The other side that has struggled this year are the Tactics, fifth on the ladder. They've only had 2 or 3 changes to the side that made the final for the past 2 years. Dion, what do you think their biggest issue has been?
You know, I was just looking. Nathan and Tapia are taking, like, Tapia's taking more centre passes than what Nathan is. I think first of all, their second phase off their own attacking centre pass is a bit stagnant. It's a bit of a problem. I think they're tentative to throw the passes they want to throw into the circle. I think that there's some ownership problems down in that shooting end. And what I mean by that is some people need to stand up and take accountability for themselves and stop finger pointing. It's not a lot of things. It's probably a couple of things that need to be sorted out. But I think that Marianne can iron that out. But they're going to, they've literally got one more game to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think Marianne Delaney-Hoshek has got some big recruitment decisions to make in the next wee while. Joan, Kimi Oropoi's having a good season, very rarely has a bad game. It's a bit of a mystery to me who will wear the centre bib in Birmingham. Do you have a preference?
Oh, I really like Mila Buchanan. Out of every centre, she is delivering what you want. Her tenacity, her improvement every game. Her defence has really improved. Kimi's got the fitness. She's got all of the things that you need at centre. She's in a team that is really struggling, but she can still lift it, and she does. But Mila is probably the one that is standing out the most. After seeing Maddie Gordon on the weekend, definitely she's right up there too. It's just Mila probably is in the front running for me at the moment, in terms of all you need as a centre.
The Stars are third on the table. They are the least accurate side, about 78% shooting accuracy. It's been killing them, and it's what killed them last year too. That game against the Mystics over the weekend, the Stars played well. They pushed the Mystics, but Maya Wilson was benched. It's not just her shooting accuracy. She seems to be putting up less volume this year. Dion, do you think Wilson is at risk of missing out on Silver Fern selection?
She's sitting at 84%, which is not where we needed to be another 10% on top of that for international standard. This happened last year, right? About this time in the crunch time,
yep.
and I feel as though that should have been addressed last year, and it should have been kept an eye on this year. And I kind of do feel for Maya, if I'm being honest. How can she be helped? I do believe she'll get chances with games leading into the final selection for the Com Games team. Maybe her style needs a tweak, I do sort of feel when she's so used to shooting right under that post, when she starts to shoot from a bit further back, she kind of shot puts her shot. She shoots it, like a lot flatter with a flat hand. So, yeah, who is and who isn't putting their hand up at the moment? There's not very many names that you would say, like Kelly Jury, yes, she's going to be in the black dress, right? Is Maya? Yeah, I do believe she still has a chance, definitely.
I agree.
Yeah, there's going to be some tight calls, that's for sure. If you're Kitty Wills and you've got the Silver Fern starting goal shoot, which Wilson has been really for the last couple of years, and Hume, who's also a Silver Fern squad member, you probably think you're home and hosed in that shooting end, but it just hasn't panned out that way. So it'll be interesting to see what Wills might do recruitment-wise over the off-season. Joan, Gina Crampton, what have you made of her form so far?
Pretty quiet, up to date. On the weekend, she did show, the glimpses of how good she is and why she is the top wing attack in the country. However, she's been surpassed, by really good performances. Shannon Saunders has been probably the most consistent wing attack. It's just the accuracy. At wing attack, you've got to be pinpoint. And Gina Crampton has showed that on many occasions, not only for New Zealand, but for the Stars as well. But she's been really quiet this year. And I think that's been the making of Rielu Buchanan, because she's taken over the role that Gina has always provided for the Stars.
Yeah.
That's really good for Gina to be able to back off and let her shine and be supportive in the role of making sure that she's always there, wherever Mila and the shooters need her. So she's playing a really different role for her this year. However, she's also supporting, probably one of the stars for ANZ Premiership at the moment.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Joan. Gina's world class, right? And she's proving that over the years, time and time again. She's just, you watched her play for the Silver Ferns. She steps up a gear. And I think last year, with that captaincy, I think she sort of it might have made her reevaluate a bit and step back. And like you say, Joan, maybe she is trying to feed the younger players through and give them their chance to shine and play that supporting role. And that's what I've seen of her this year. But I believe when she puts that black dress on and she gets back out there, she'll be the Gina Crampton that we all know and respect.
Yeah, I think so. The returnees, Holly Fowler and Kayla Johnson, have been sharing the wing defence position at the Stars. I wonder if that's hurting Johnson's chances for the Com game selection. She got a lot of court time in the quad series at goal defence. Now she's getting half games at wing defence at the Stars. Dion, how do you think Kayla's going?
I do believe she still has a lot to offer, and I think she is going okay. But I do feel as though there are players that, do you compare her with a Maddie Gordon and what Maddie can offer? The young guns that can really that can cover two positions, three positions. And I think the Ferns this year may look at someone that can cover all three positions in that midcourt, just to give them a bit more flexibility. With both of their ends as well. Be interesting to see where they go with that. Look, I think she's got just as much of a chance as any other player. The gate's pretty wide open.
I saw Johnson had some strapping on one of her knees last weekend, which made me a bit nervous given her history with injuries.
Yeah.
The Southern Steel are fourth on the ladder, the only side, apart from the Magic, who've managed to beat the Mystics, although the Magic lost is when the Mystics didn't have Grace Wicke. George Fisher is a massive asset for the Steel, obviously. She did get frustrated by jury on Monday night. You couldn't hear what Fisher said, but the umpire gave her a caution after she said something about jury clipping her behind the knee. She had a pretty heavy fall. And on the weekend, Stars v Mystics, Grace Wicke, after being awarded the penalty, said something like, "She's been grabbing my arm all game." Then Wicke was cautioned for dissent and wasn't allowed to take the penalty shot at halftime. Joan, found that quite interesting, but you can tell that the umpires have been told to adopt a zero tolerance approach to any kind of dissent this season.
I think that Georgie Fisher was really hard done by. I think that it was messy. I think that the umpires should have, in my opinion, made sure that the players were clear about it, but also pulling up the contact. She was freaking knocked around, bro. A lot of the players are being pushed, like being allowed to do things that you're not allowed to in the rules. That's where you look to the umpire to sort that shit out. And if they're not sorting that out, the players take their own devices and they take it into their own hands. And when they do that, the umpire is allowed to say that that's dissent. But if you're getting pushed around as she was, I'd get pissed off too. But there are ways of fixing that up.
Yeah, I think that Fisher felt that breached the line of safety.
Yep.
It wasn't intentional from jury, but she definitely went into the back of Fisher's leg, took her out. The umpire seemed to miss it. I kind of understood Fisher's frustration.
There's a lot of shit that goes down under the post.
Yeah.
And it's allowed. And if you keep on allowing it, that's the shit that you get. So as an umpire, you've got to sort that out yourself so everybody's very clear. I'm not going to allow you to do that. And the players look to that, and the players, have to, basically do what the umpire says.
We saw that in the last couple of weeks, Kate Welsh in the Australian League got frustrated. I reckon that's built up over a long period of time where the defender they get the 3 feet, they put the arm up over the shot, and the shooters somehow think it's okay to come in and with their head and move their arm out of place. It was a build-up of frustration, and that's Kate Walsh. She didn't react well, but why didn't the umpires nip it in the bud in the first place?
Oh, exactly. It's Dion, you've had experiences with umpires. You keep on telling your teams, you've got to look at the umpires, and you've got to make sure that you adapt to what they're asking for.
A lot of the times when I ask my captains to go over and say something to them, generally it'll be a defender, doing something off the ball, is their reply is that the shooter needs to adjust their angle so that they can see. And that astounds me, and then it's kind of like, I've never understood.
Wow.
an umpire saying that the shooters need to basically show them that they're being contacted. And it just used to blow my mind, and it still does, to be honest, even at Premier Club level. But at the end of the day, shooters are going to get hammered, and more so in this modern game. I mean, you look at the modern game now, they just, they get hammered. And maybe the umpiring has changed a little bit. I think there should be able to be maybe a little bit more dialogue with umpires. If you look at basketball, they're probably a bit too far the other way, where they have a running dialogue with umpires for the whole game. I think, that's going too far. But I think that the conversations that you should be able to have with umpires, and if I look at the last year's Cadbury series, I thought the umpires were, really good. Like, we could go and talk to them and be pretty straight up. And I had a pretty good relationship with those umpires anyway, but that's probably the one thing where I think there needs to be a bit more of a freedom of speech and a bit more of a relationship, where you don't have to say things a certain way, where you can just say, hey, my shooters, like Fisher was being smashed, and there was a lot of grabbing, from the top side of the circle, with the hand that can't be seen, whilst the other hand is sort of looking as though she's being guarded. So yeah, I'm really glad, Joan, that with what you've said, it's good to hear.
The best umpires that, I ever had as a player were the umpires that would come to our trainings.
Yes.
And they would be able to see what the players could do.
Yeah.
Like they were able to help with the 0.9 of a metre.
Yeah.
All of those little things, and the dialogue that you're talking about, that definitely needs to happen, and that's what would happen at training sessions.
I will say the one umpire in New Zealand that's always been, she's just like, just tell it to me straight, is Ange Armstrong-Lush.
Right.
Me is the one umpire that she's always just been like, just tell me, like I'd sooner you just told me. And she used to come up to me after games and say, I missed a call over there. And she said, I can see you looking at me, but you never said anything. So thank you for that. And Woody, as a coach, you've got nothing after that. You're kind of like, yeah, thanks for acknowledging it. That's all we want is acknowledgement. But yeah, sorry, we're getting into the umpiring thing.
That's good going on the umpiring tangent. So let's go to the Pulse. They are second on the ladder. I'll be interested to see how they go against the Mystics when they meet for the third time later this month. That will be the big test. Mystics just pipped them by 1 in their last meeting. The Pulse have the best defensive record. Jury, Manua, Lokatui, although the knee injury didn't look good for Paris, but Maddie Gordon, what a fill in there at wing defence. Dion, how good is the Pulse backline?
They're fantastic. You look at who's here in Wellington. They've got a vet, obviously, who's an amazing coach. But I know that for a fact that Waitamanu has quite a bit to do with getting their defensive line quite steely. And they always have really good defense, don't they? The Pulse, and then they can build the rest of their game on top of that. And the form that Kelly's in at the moment. Kelly's in amazing form, but I think, she has a silent partner out in front of her, and Manu has been a revelation. And I think, Kelly should be buying her a few cups of tea at the end of each game, because she is really setting her up for some good stuff back there, and really grafting, but doing it under the radar. And then, of course, that wing defence, they've had Paris. Hopefully her knee's going to be okay. And then, of course, Maddie. So they've had the luxury of being able to pick and choose and manoeuvre things around, but they've had a very solid goal kick, goal D for the whole ANZ season. And Manua in a black dress, is that going to happen? Because man, she's knocking on the door pretty hard.
Joan, Tiana Maturo, I remember you picked it before last season, that Maturo, she had it in her, that you predicted she was going to have a big season at the Steel, and she did, rewarded with Silver Fern selection. This could be a massive year for her, especially if Ignacio doesn't make it to the Com Games.
What I really love about Tiana is the way and the consistency that she's playing. However, in the last couple of weeks, she started to get a bit stagnant in the circle. That bothers me, because at this moment, what she needs to be doing is preparing for international honours. she's got to be the one that's going to be taking over from Ekanasio at goal attack. So, you know, what I would be asking her to do is to get ready for international honours. And what that means is everything that she does, whenever she takes the court, she must be hitting at 85%, you know, goal accuracy. Her passes need to be pinpoint. She needs to be working with her goal shooter, you know, just doing the things that a goal attack should be doing, you know, working with a really good goal shooter. And she can feed and Weke, you know, like Grace. The two of them could be unstoppable and could be for a number of years. You know, I don't know any other goal attack at the moment that's got anything on Tiana. Her defence is really good. I think, you know, she is going to be the answer to a missing Ekanasio.
Finally, the Mystics odds on to finish top of the table and get home advantage come finals. No side has yet beaten the Mystics in Mystics territory. Dion, are there any teams out there who can do that?
The Pulse, I think, pound for pound, matched them everywhere across the court, including goal shoot with Dunn at the back. You know, if not better, actually. But you know, and the Steel. Now, you know, talk about the Steel for a sec. The Steel, for me, are the most adaptable team in this competition. Every time they play a team, if they lose to them, they go away and they come back out and they have an amazing game plan every single time, and they will beat that other team. You know, the Steel, for me, are the dark horse of this competition, and I think the Pulse and the Steel are more than capable of matching the Mystics and in all areas of the court, but in particular the Pulse. But for me, the Steel are the most adaptable and smart team in this competition.
Former Silver Ferns coach Leigh Gibbs has been fine-tuning her selection radar as far back as the mid-1990s. She's part of the current Silver Ferns selection panel, who have got a few busy weeks ahead as we lead up to the Commonwealth Games. I asked Gibbs if picking a Silver Ferns team has become more complex.
Well, what has changed as well is it's not necessarily complex in the sense that we're still ultimately picking what we consider the best. What has helped, I believe, is the amount of data and also opportunities to observe players. Way back in the 90s, National League hadn't even started, so we were having to select from nationals, if you recall. What happened in that space. So you saw a group of players predominantly over a week of netball, which, you know, had some value because it was the World Championship or Cups format. However, it meant that if someone wasn't on their game over that week, you really didn't see much. You didn't see them at other times. This way round, it's much better. You're seeing players over a longer period of time. And then you put trials on the mix, which is happening this time for the Commonwealth Games selections, that you're looking at players very closely. We're seeing players over the long term. So if they are taking a bit longer because of COVID or even returning from injury, we know that we've got data and information and observation of them at other times.
How does it work? Does Nolene have the final say, I imagine?
Well, interestingly, and this is not unique to this selection team, over the years I've been involved, because the conversations around players is ongoing and we are seeing them frequently and we have the data collection, I haven't had that experience of where there's been, okay, well, the coach has the final say. Well, ultimately they do. However, in my experience, it's been really a good process to get to where we all agree.
You've obviously been watching netballers for a number of years. You've poured over the videos. Do you become very quick at assessing a player?
Yeah, I guess there are things that attract us from just our experience, as you've indicated, but I'm really mindful of keeping an open mind, not having sort of a predetermined sort of expectation. And that's where it's really good to have a look at data as well as our eye and experience from that. So it's not one thing. And certainly the experience has shown up the elements that catches our eye very quickly.
When I think of Silver Ferns teams in the past, or the not too distant past, I feel like it was easier to identify than your starting seven or your strongest sort of nine. The coach might have made a couple of changes back then, but I feel like now maybe it's a result of greater depth. And when we're talking about some positions around the court, especially in the mid-court, we're talking about maybe 4 players vying for that starting spot. Have you noticed that increased depth has made it maybe harder to identify who our top players are?
Look, I think those are ebbs and flows, but I agree with you. I think what perhaps has come to the fore this year as a result of COVID is that players are getting coming on and off within a game. That was uncommon. In fact, if you did that, and as a coach I'm thinking about my time with tactics, and you made changes, it was probably looked upon not so favourably. However, because of necessity and potentially the value in that players are having to really be comfortable coming on within the context of the game and hit the ground running. There's no settling in period. And by bringing them in and giving them court time, more so than, they sit on the bench and only come on, on occasions, that's building experience and capability. Because I go back to Lois Muir's wonderful saying, you don't make mistakes on the sideline, and that ability to get on court and really suffer to a certain extent if the errors are made, and having to work your way through it is valuable learning and builds the depth of player that can take the court. And we're seeing that, and that's great. I suppose the downside of that is players have sometimes got to run out the full 60, and if they haven't been getting the full 60 minutes on court, that brings other challenges, hence coming back to the need for a minimum standard of yo-yo performance.
Are there players that have really stood out to you so far this season?
The other question that sometimes comes, will there be any bolters? But I think because we're seeing them so frequently and over numbers of years now, I believe that it's hard to sort of identify one or two. I'm really excited to see younger players being given the opportunity and stepping up. I'm excited at the opportunity that players are taking and some differences that they're bringing to the court. No one person is sort of standing out in that sense.
What about Kimi Orapoi? What are the selectors looking for her to improve in her game?
Well, I think in all mid-court positions, that ability to have variety. She's wonderful, wonderful conditioning and speed in the, opposition of Australia and England particularly, and Jamaica to a certain extent in a different context, mixing it up. So being able to put the fast with the change of pace, the ability to feed in with deception and having just those touches on the ball when you're being heavily marked, and having, particularly if you're playing Australia, a 0.9 defender in front of you whose arms are all over you. So a whole skill set that shows that ability to adjust and adapt depending on the opponent. Now with the Jamaican style of defence, who are more rangy and more off marking, who'll come through because they haven't been tight on you necessarily, with just marvellous acceleration and elevation, you can't afford to sort of just play the same way and play at speed. That ability to change up the speed is really important. So mid-quarters all need to be able to mix their game up. And when you think of that element, you've got to think, well, those shooters need to be able to adjust to that change of timing as well.
This Commonwealth Games team is quite a difficult one to predict, and even just having conversations in the office. Normally in the past, you'd come up with a list of 12 and you compare it, and there might be a couple of differences between your pick and someone else's pick. I'm finding that there are differences of 3 to 4 players. Is it because we maybe don't have the superstars of the past that dominated their positions year after year, that there is more opportunity?
Yeah, there's definitely a changing of the guard. You know, you think of Casey Cooper and Katrina Rory no longer there, and Maria Falau. So some real big names. And I might remind you, and I'm sure you don't need reminding, those players weren't overnight successes. They took time, a bit of a changing of the guard, and we've got some young or less experienced, I guess, in the mix, and having to, as selectors, make judgments around their capability going into that Commonwealth Games arena, backing up game after game and nailing combinations in that context as well is what we're challenged with too. And yes, I'm still, you know, having our eyes wide open. We've got a few more rounds to go, and that's where the performances week in, week out is really important.